So I think at the end of that, and thank you so much. That was really enlightening. No, I think everyone was kind of at the edge of their seat. But Adon, to kind of answer your question, how do you go to CFOs and COOs who kind of turn to you and say, okay, what does this mean to us? Platforms like his provide the data that's essential to be able to prove that out to them. And from his model, like you mentioned, it's not necessarily about the cost of the carbon that you're selling in the open market, but he's selling the data, which is going to become increasingly more important. He mentioned California has adopted a lot of things that Canada did. So I'm so glad that Jeff kind of provided a little bit of insight there. But as far as Canada, they've implemented this policy. California recently did, and I know that it's on the horizon. We're already seeing a lot. Amazon and big companies now rank you on there based on your carbon footprint and things like this, if I'm not mistaken. So I believe when I was listening to a podcast, and you can tell us a little bit more about your forecast here, I think they said, and I think this was last year, that in 5 years, they think that all Fortune 500 companies will be required to buy or be buying this or offsetting their carbon. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know the stat on that. I do know that where we are as a, I think we're all confused as to where we are as a, like in the food and ag industry as a whole, because there's so much market discovery or just discovery in general that has to happen. So a lot of what we're helping out with is data, just discovering that there's data available to do this in a way that is long term. It's a viable option. It's not just this, hey, cool, let's catch this carbon market trend as it comes through the neighborhood kind of thing. So I think the long term, I really don't have the confidence that it would be mandated, right? Like there's one thing I learned about working with the government is that they provide guidance because they don't have the money to make rules. Right? It's like whether or not they make rules behind it, I don't know. I'm sure there will be ample guidance behind how these companies should operate. The SBTI protocol is part of that. There's a lot of guidance provided by SBTI. I would just say that whether or not it's mandatory, people have to decide whether or not they want to.
Well,
and it's really a choice.
Yeah, and like we talked about the other day, I mean, it's all about the downstream. So the people that were selling the finished, really just the decorticated fiber. So good example in that would be the concrete manufacturers.
Totally.
What's one of the most pollutant of carbon in our world is the production of concrete. So if we can reduce some of that by putting in 30% of concrete to be hemp hurd, then that concrete manufacturer, there's a bunch of them right down the road here, would think that they're going to have some carbon offset requirements.
That's easy math too, because you just take this, like hemp fiber is like 40% carbon. So you just take your dry matter times 40% and you know how much carbon you're selling. And even if you want to value hemp on carbon value alone, it would be an acre would be worth a few $100s just on carbon value alone. So like that's just like the ethanol market. It's like there's the, was it Adon saying something about the tax credits, or is he gone now? But he was saying something about tax credits. I think it was him that's saying it.
Yep.
So yeah, the 45Z tax credit that's going to happen in the biofuels market is all about carbon intensity and the score of that carbon intensity as it translates over to kilojoule per bushel, maybe, or
something like that.
Something like that. But there's going to be all these opportunities that open up behind carbon that are kind of like that, and then like 45Z is specific to biofuels. But the reason we calculate carbon intensity is because like that's the number. If you want to know the carbon footprint of a product, carbon intensity has kind of become the go-to term for the biofuels market, but it's actually the term of like all the calculations that we do. So the number we give the elevator that's buying the wheat from our farmer is actually the carbon intensity of that product. It's how much carbon impact this bushel create as it was, from seed to here it is in the grain tank at the local elevator, whatever it needs to be. So it's right around the corner where we're able to value that, or it's right around the corner where we're able to standardize that. So we can't commoditize that CI number, and I don't think anybody wants to commoditize because then it cheapens. But let's be real: if you want it to take off and you want any kind of mechanism behind it that's You have to standardize.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that's what the ESG investor is looking for. And that might have been another thing that Adon was leaning into is right now, I read somewhere that like 80% of investors are looking for ESG investments. So in regards to carbon credits and companies that are doing things, I have somebody on this call, Ingrid, who does a lot of the hemp home building. So I know you mentioned that. I wanted to call her out here.
Hey,
Being
Ingrid.
being able to monetize and talk to an investor, being a company like the group that she's working with, like what we're doing, and farmers that maybe have their own business or thinking about getting more involved in this, leveraging their grain drying system to implement some kind of amendments that'll allow for grain drying of hemp grain. What sort of things can your product produce to give them the certainty to go up to investors and maybe make the claim that they are an ESG investment? And you can, our rationale is because we're utilizing this platform, or our customers utilize this platform. We're working with these companies. I'll let you kind of dovetail off of that.
sure. I mean, for us, working with our product and leveraging our product to get to the next step of wherever you're going in your value proposition is part of what we're focused on. I mean, it's going to come down to a data volume type of activity, right? Any type of investment activity requires whatever diligence process they require, and the investment committee needs to see what they need to see. Our goal is to strictly provide verified, credible data to back up these decisions that these ESG these companies influenced by ESG policy, or investors influenced by ESG opportunities, are making. So being able to provide the data that those analysts need to make sound decisions about a business, whether that business is an aggregator or whether that business is maybe an aggregator producer that just has multiple parcel productions under management, it doesn't matter. What we want to do is provide them with the type of data that they need to not have to go through and do a series of 4 months worth of due diligence to try to find out where the data is coming from and whether or not the data is valid. Because that's, whether it's land valuation or land investment, or whether it's a messy middle investments in supply chain infrastructure, it doesn't matter. The amount of diligence in the analytics alone, just in the analytics space around an investment, is like, it's daunting. It just makes deals not get done, and it all has to do with the quality of the data that they have access to.
Mm-hmm.
So what we want to do is just show without a doubt, like, hey, here's an opportunity for a processor, or here's an opportunity for someone to aggregate raw bales of product, and then here's an opportunity 20 miles away to put a processor that actually optimizes like 2 or 3 other zones. Like, that's the type of information we want people to see within our platform, is where they, it's not just about discovering data that's available for ecosystems. It's about the optimization of what you do with that data. So how do you use it to then make more efficiencies in your supply chain? How do you create more margin? How do you reduce environmental impact? A lot of that is just focusing on that it's 2024, and we got rid of a lot of the middle that supported a lot of these different ventures that we're all focused on right now. Like, there used to be a nice little infrastructure in all of these rural communities for hemp, and there used to be an infrastructure for all these other things, and we've gotten rid of them for the large scale commodity markets, and now we need to do the work to get them back. It's going to take the data to do that. So.